When you stand back and look at Doctor Who, the majority of the villains weren't all-powerful beings. They're scavengers, taking advantage of whatever's to hand to make the most of a bad situation. Maybe that makes them smart, maybe that makes them lazy, but whichever way you look at it, you'd be hard-pressed to find a scheme that wouldn't have succeeded if it wasn't for the Doctor's intervention. Pretty much every villain the Doctor has fought would have got away with it if it wasn't for the Doctor or their companions saving the day. And some of them had some pretty smarty-pants plans that we're genuinely impressed by. And so, with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with the 10 smartest villain plans in Doctor Who. Number 10. Miss Foster in Partners in Crime. One surefire way to invade without resistance is to trick the population into thinking you're offering them something they want. That's the tactic matron Ophelia, under the alias Miss Foster, took when she was tasked with finding a new breeding world for the adipose. She capitalised on 21st century Britain's obsession with weight loss by distributing a too-good-to-be-true diet pill, which, when activated, turned excess human fat into adipose babies. It's the one plan on this list that, in fairness, might have actually benefited humanity under more agreeable conditions. Even the Doctor eventually admits that as a diet plan it sort of works. It's just a shame that using a level 5 planet for breeding is against galactic law. Besides, Miss Foster had her eyes on much more than just weight loss. Ultimately, she planned to conduct emergency pathogenesis, a process by which human hair, bones and organs can also be converted, leaving nothing left. The Doctor was able to put a stop to the scheme by hacking the adipose computer, but there was nothing he could do about the adipose that had already been bred, other than let them live, which means that, to quote the Doctor himself, Miss Foster's plan sort of worked. Number 9. The Master in Frontier in Space. The first Master, brought to life so brilliantly by Roger Delgado, had his fair share of evil schemes, from the bonkers to the brilliant. Frontier in Space most definitely falls into the latter category. In the 26th century, humans and draconians are able to exist alongside each other, but allegations of attacks on each other's territory are rife, heightening tensions between the two species. The real culprit? The Commissioner of Sirius 4. Otherwise known as the Master, who is using a hypnosound machine to disguise Ogrons as humans and Draconians, with the intention of provoking a full-scale war. As revealed at the serial's end, this is part of a larger plan to pave the way for a Dalek invasion. Unfortunately, we never got to see the end result of this invasion, nor how the Master's alliance with the Daleks ended. In fact, Frontier in Space marks Roger Delgado's final appearance in the show, as he would tragically pass away shortly after the story first broadcast. Had he been around to feature in the following season, we might have seen an even more audacious scheme from this Master. But as things stand, this is definitely his most ambitious. Number 8. The Ravagers in Flux. The Ravagers, otherwise known as Swarm and Azure, were the overarching antagonists of Series 13, and for a while we were constantly in the dark about their true motives. But if you stand back and look at it, their plan, though technically complex, is actually pretty simple. Swarm and Azure are the ultimate scavengers. Their initial aim is revenge against the Doctor and Division for imprisoning them all those years ago, and how do they go about doing this? By using Division's most powerful weapons against it. After building a psychotemporal bridge capable of reaching Division's base, the pair are able to complete the first part of their plan, doing away with head honcho Tecteun. But their ultimate goal is to do away with all physical things in the universe. And how? By hijacking the flux to create endless destruction and then using time to replay that destruction in an endless loop. If the Doctor hadn't managed to in turn hijack the flux against them, the Ravagers would have succeeded, with devastating results for the entire universe. Number 7. SCAROTH in City of Death. SCAROTH, last of the Jaggeroth, is a textbook example of making the most of a bad situation. When his ship exploded in prehistoric Earth, he was flung into the time vortex and split into 12 splinters of himself, scattered across Earth's history. SCAROTH's 12th incarnation found himself in Paris 1979, a period where, obviously, time travel had not yet developed. However, there was nothing to stop him developing it prematurely by conducting his own experiments. There was just one problem. Time travel experiments aren't cheap. Fortunately, one of SCAROTH's splinters, Captain Tancredi, was a contemporary of Leonardo da Vinci, who he persuaded to paint a further 6 copies of the Mona Lisa. These could then be sold in 1979 to make a quick buck. In the end, SCAROTH's ultimate plan, to go back in time and prevent his ship from exploding, was sabotaged. But his plan was very smart, and he was successful in one regard. When most copies of the Mona Lisa are destroyed in a fire, including the original, the only copy left is one of SCAROTH's fakes. So in a sense, we've got him to thank for the fact that the painting still exists today. Number 6. Missy in Dark Water and Death in Heaven. The Master's regeneration into a woman was the single biggest change to the character in their then 43-year history, as reflected by their temporary name change to Missy. But one thing that hadn't changed was the Master's knack for a good old evil plan. They'd always enjoyed playing the long game, but Missy took it to the extreme, establishing herself as a godlike figure and picking up the Doctor's departed friends in a series of cameos across Series 8, apparently set in heaven. Of course, the truth was a lot darker. In reality, this mystery location was the Nethersphere, a cloud-based depository to which minds were uploaded and then downloaded into new Cyberman bodies. Missy's ultimate aim? To gift this new army of Cybermen to the Doctor as a birthday present. But there's more. How did the Doctor become embroiled in Missy's plan? Through his companion Clara, whose partner Danny was killed in a hit and run. Might Missy have been the one driving the car to ensure the whole chain of events was set in motion? Well, it's not the most unlikely headcanon. Number 5. Davros in Revelation of the Daleks. Missy wasn't the only one to take advantage of dead bodies. In fact, the Doctor's other nemesis, Davros, got there first, fashioning a new race of Daleks from the dead. And having established himself as the head of funeral parlour Tranquil Repose, he was perfectly placed to do so. This wasn't the only string to Davros's bow, however. Ever resourceful, he used the remains of these, remains, to create a revolutionary new food source for a famine-ridden galaxy. This, in turn, bolstered his reputation as the philanthropic great healer, which enabled him to continue his experiments unnoticed. Like Missy, Davros used one of the Doctor's friends to lure him to his lair, the late Arthur Stengos. Unlike Missy, however, his aims were more traditional, to conquer the universe. What he hadn't counted on was 2 of Tranquil Repose's staff allying themselves with the rival renegade faction of Daleks who were intent on recapturing Davros and putting him on trial, a goal they managed to achieve. In the commotion, he lost his surviving hand, hence why the Davros of the Revival series has a metal gauntlet. Number 4. RASSMUSSEN in Sleep No More. Like Miss Foster, Professor Gagan Rasmussen came up with a solution to one of humanity's biggest bugbears: sleep. The average person spends 1/3 of their life sleeping. Rasmussen sought to do something about this, and he succeeded. His Morpheus pods, named after the god of dreams, were capable of concentrating a month of sleep into 5 minutes, enabling its user to spend more time awake. They were loved by some and hated by others, but you can't deny that, at least in principle, it's not a bad idea. But there was a catch. When we sleep, dust builds up in the corner of our eyes. The more time we spend asleep, the more this dust builds up, and the electronic signal transmitted by the Morpheus pods had the unfortunate catch of giving this dust sentience, creating carnivorous sandmen. Which is kinda gross when you think about it. I mean, the sleepy dust in your eyes making creatures? Grim. The Doctor managed to destroy the Morpheus pods which hadn't yet been distributed and sought to destroy all those that had. But Rasmussen, being a genius, had one more trick up his sleeve. A video recording into which the Morpheus signal was encoded, infecting anyone who watched it. And not just any video recording, but the very episode of Doctor Who we'd all just witnessed. Does anyone else feel like they need to rub their eyes now? Number 3. RASSILON in The Five Doctors. As one of the founders of Time Lord Society, it was important that Rassilon maintained his position. So he designed a test, the game of Rassilon, for anyone who sought to usurp him, and in fairness, it worked. The challenge? To reach Rassilon's tomb in the Death Zone on Gallifrey. The reward? The Ring of Rassilon, which bestows immortality upon its wearer. At least this is what fellow Time Lord Barusa understood the game of Rassilon to be. But there was a catch. A riddle hidden in plain sight, inscribed on an obelisk in the tomb. To lose is to win, and he who wins shall lose. Though that clearly sounds like a warning, Barusa doesn't care one bit. As he discovers, the Ring of Rassilon does indeed grant its wearer immortality, albeit not in the form of perpetual regeneration, but perpetual imprisonment, as a mummified face on the side of Rassilon's sarcophagus. It is quite different to the other plans on this list, since the Doctor was quite happy to stand back and let it reach fruition, but no less ingenious. Number 2, the SLITHEEN in Aliens of London and World War III. Let's face it, the SLITHEEN are remembered for one thing and one thing only, but forget about the flatulence and you're left with a surprisingly canny, watertight plan. This was 21st Century Who's first fully fledged alien invasion, and showrunner Russell T Davies certainly pulled out all the stops, coming up with something truly special. It all begins with that iconic shot of a spaceship scuffing the side of Big Ben before landing in the Thames. Its pilot, a spacesuit-clad pig designed to distract from the real aliens while they establish themselves at the heart of the British government. Their goal? To incite enough panic to initiate a third world war, reducing the Earth to smithereens which can then be sold on the black market. Meanwhile, they can escape in their spaceship conveniently parked at the bottom of the Thames. Staging a fake alien invasion in order to further your own is a frankly genius move and quite unlike anything we'd seen in the show up to this point. It's never going to be the thing the SLITHEEN are best remembered for, but that doesn't stop it from being a genuinely brilliant plan. Number 1. The monks in the Monk Trilogy. The monks are, without a doubt, the most duplicitous race to ever stage an invasion of Earth. For one thing, they had a lot of practice, using a highly sophisticated simulation of the planet to determine the optimum time and place to strike. For another, they rule not through force, but through a contract of consent. Once they've secured that consent, by, for example, posing as saviours in the face of a genuine natural catastrophe and framing their dominion as the least worst option, there's no going back. The monks had used this strategy to conquer a multitude of planets, and Earth was no exception, the catastrophe in question being the accidental creation of a deadly bacteria. Fast forward 6 months and they've subjugated the planet's population. For a time, it seems even the Doctor has fallen under their spell. Ultimately though, Bill is able to corrupt the monks' propaganda with memories of her mother, but if it wasn't for that, their reign might never have ended. What's more, unlike most villains on this list, the monks escaped with their lives, and arguably in a stronger position than they were in before. It's surely only a matter of time before they just strike again. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Who Culture video again. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there and Instagram as well. I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.